Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Annalise Poorman. On December 5th at the Monroe County Election Board meeting, County Clerk Nicole Brown gave a summary of the 2024 general election and voter turnout.
We had 93,146 registered voters, and 59,914 voted in this general election, which is reflective of a 64.32% turnout. There were 5,361 voters who voted absentee. There were 30,625 voters who voted early, and 23,928 voters who voted on Election Day. It appears that the highest precinct turnout was Perry 18 with an 80.10% turnout for that precinct, and the lowest was Bloomington 7 with a 9.46% turnout. For the provisional ballots that we did take care of on November 15th, we had 390 ballots that were reviewed by the election board. 331 of those ballots were rejected, and 59 ballots were approved and counted. And in a huge shout out to our poll workers, we had 29 inspectors, 84 judges, 245 clerks, 42 sheriffs, for a total of 400 people working for us on Election Day, as well as 320 total early voting workers and 356 young people aged 16 to 17 signed up to work this election. And so I want to give a huge shout out to every single person who served either early voting or Election Day. What an incredible turnout. And I forgot one other statistic. Thank you, Ms. Kiley, for noting this. For location turnout, we had 1,901 voters who voted at St. John's. That's reflective of 40% of the eligible voters who report to that polling site. And then at Burgoon, 112 people voted, and for them, that is a 78.05% turnout. So looks like it was a really good election. Thank you to one and all.
Board President John Fernandez shared some things he wants to improve upon moving forward. He explained that there was an issue at the Indiana Memorial Union that was most likely due to a breakdown in communication.
I mean, it seemed like, for the most part, the execution of the election went well. We had a few hiccups with number of ballots that we'll want to start thinking ahead. How do we mitigate that? I'm also a little worried that we had some equipment failure. So I think as we look to the next election, making sure that we're taking all of our kind of after action reporting and baking in. I think there's an issue around training that we're going to have to be clear about in terms of what we're telling voters as they come in. I mean, the situation at the Memorial Union was really unfortunate. I'm not sure where the breakdown was in that, but to have so many people waiting in line to cast a provisional vote when they weren't even registered in Monroe County seems like there's a breakdown in communication somewhere. And I don't know if it's at the front of the line or as they're going through the process. I know that there's issues of telling people that, if they want to cast a ballot, they can cast a ballot. But it just seems like a real, unforced error. And some might hope that we could get ahead of before the next election.
Fernandez also thanked the county's GIS staff for their work in sharing election results. He also said that he has some concerns regarding the vote reporting consulting business and Island LLC.
I thought want to thank the GIS department team for, pulling together an experiment in terms of how we can improve reporting. I think there's a platform there that can be beneficial. But, we need to think about how do we build on the learnings that we have and bake in, a database that can provide some historical trend lines and good information that others can use in terms of evaluating the effectiveness of our elections, but also turnout data, et cetera. I do have a concern about that I'll come back to in a different format, but I think there were some things that happened on election day related to Ann Island LLC that I think were confusing. I'll just leave it at that. And it's something that I'll try and find a different format for following up on, but I do have some concerns about that.
Fernandez also commented on the future of the convention center and how that will affect voting locations in the future.
I guess the last thing I would say is that, there's going to be a convention center being built at the location where we have been doing early voting for several years. And would suggest it's not too early to be engaging in conversations with the commissioners and others, to be planning ahead and evaluating what the future looks like in terms of locations, where we'll have access that won't be disruptive to other functions. I mean, that was such a great site because it was a standalone building with a lot of parking. Not located in downtown Bloomington 2 years from now are kind of slim and none. So I think it's behooves us to start thinking now about where we're going to have that kind of facility in the future.
Next, representing the Vote Center Study Committee, Ami Gandhi gave a report on the work that they've been doing and asked the board for more direction moving forward.
Our committee wanted to make sure to alert you of the main outcome of that meeting, which is that we took a straw poll to get a sense of where each committee member was inclined to go relating to the possibility of recommending vote centers for Monroe County, and wanted to share with you the results of that and also share with you our ask, because we have a similar sort of question for the election board about where you may be inclined, or if it's too early to ask that question, get a better sense of what information you may be looking for, what analysis you may be looking for in order to weigh in more on that. And so where we're at with the numbers as far as our committee participation is that the most number of people, 6 people on the committee, were inclined at this time to suggest that Monroe County should move to a vote center model, selecting 22 vote center sites based on an analysis of proximity to voters, turnout, socioeconomic factors, and the site suitability, among other factors that we've been getting a lot of community input and engagement on over the last several months. So that's where 6 people were at. In addition, there were a couple of us stragglers in other categories. One recommended that Monroe County not adopt a vote center model, so in other words, to stay with precinct-based polling places like the current system. One, me, recommended that Monroe County convert all existing polling sites to vote centers. A little bit of tweak to that, I would say, which I can say because it was me, is that what I recommended is that the amount stay the same, the number stay the same, but not necessarily that it needs to be that identical building that was used in the last election, because of you all know, all of the considerations that go into selecting a suitable location, and how my recommendation was that the numbers stay the same, but there be an openness to the sensibility of other locations to do a swap where needed. And one person abstained. And we definitely have had a reasoned approach to analysis and recommendations, so all of us remain open to further input, analysis, and discussion. But in order to move forward with our next steps as our committee in continuing to draft a report, we have a bare bones draft report started, but to be of more value and do what our committee is supposed to do, to be able to put more of the substance into the report, the committee was wanting to know the inclination of our election board members so that we have a sense of really what type of length of analysis to put in, and if this is going somewhere, if there's a possibility of this model change going somewhere.
Gandhi emphasized that the committee was being careful to guard against any issues that might arise from switching to a vote center model. Later in the meeting, board member Judith Bankert announced that she will be resigning from the board to focus on other efforts in the community.
It is with some regret and disappointment that I am announcing my decision to resign my position as the Republican representative on the Monroe County Election Board, effective December 31st, 2024. I have chosen to get involved in other volunteer activities that help the community and need to withdraw from this board to give me sufficient time to dedicate myself to these activities. It has been an honor and privilege to serve on the board since July of 2023. I had hoped that the vote center issue would have been resolved before I took my leave. However, it does not appear that that will be the case. If by chance the committee puts together a draft plan that meets the statutory requirements before the end of the year, I would be available to attend a special meeting of the board to assess the plan. Unless that takes place, my replacement will have the responsibility to cast the Republican vote. I thank both past Monroe County Republican Chairperson Taylor Bryant, who appointed me to this board, and current Monroe County Republican Chairperson William Ellis for trusting me to carry out the duties of a board member. It has been a pleasure to work with you, Chairman Fernandez, Clerk Brown, Molly Turner King, and Kylie Ferris, and I wish you the best going forward.
During the meeting's public comment period, Monroe County resident Cheryl Langdon shared frustration that the police had come to her home and were intimidating. Langdon also vented frustration with the county election staff and board members.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans white with foam, God bless America, my home sweet home. In the fall of 1938, as fascism and war threatened Europe, Irving Berlin decided to write a peace song. He recalled an unpublished version of a song that he had set aside in his trunk, took it out, shaped it into the second national anthem, God Bless America. I recently experienced swatting. Swatting is a criminal act that involves deceiving emergency services into sending police or emergency response team to a wrong address. It is a form of harassment. I was visited by 2 uniformed county police officers on November 2nd, the Saturday before Election Day. My neighbors saw 2 official police vehicles in my driveway, and I looked like a criminal while I was being intimidated by the police and embarrassed by county officials who were trying to find just cause to stop me from voting on Election Day. They ran my ID like I was a criminal and even requested a DNA sample. It was outrageous. I was interrogated on my front stoop in my pajamas and house robe like I was trash. They were trying to find a way to stop me from voting on that Tuesday. The legislation put through earlier this year is to protect voters in our elections. It's not for weaponizing against free American voters like myself. I'm a service-disabled veteran. I cannot believe the Gestapo tactics that are being used against free, dedicated Americans like me. It's against the law to maliciously weaponize police personnel against innocent Americans. I'm proud to say that I stood up for myself that Saturday, on Election Day, and today. I found out later that it was some sort of anonymous letter against Kylie Moreland Ferris. I'm not surprised. I've seen Kylie's mishandling in the 2023's election process, and I reported it. And I have yet to be asked to testify in an investigation concerning Kylie's mishandling of security last year and Clerk Brown's administration's conduct for the past 3 years. I want to remind everyone that America won last month, and it's about time we win more often than not. And I also want to remind John Fernandez that his treatment towards me during an earlier election board meeting this year was against his duty as a public servant. It's literally your job, John, to allow me my right to speak here. I say again, God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam, God bless America, my home sweet home.
The Monroe County Election Board will meet again on January 2nd, 2025. The Monroe County Commissioners met on December 4th. First, Health Department Administrator Lori Kelly reported that there is a new drug emerging in Monroe County called pink cocaine. She said it is a synthetic drug that is made up of an unpredictable cocktail of illicit drugs, including ketamine, other synthetic drugs, and methamphetamine. Commissioner Penny Githens said she wishes the state legislature would allow people to test their illicit drugs before using them.
We had talked about trying to buy a machine that could do that locally, but it just wasn't going to work because we could only test the needle. They'd been used.
Later, the commissioners approved the 2024 Sophia Travis Community Service Grant agreements in the total of $147,000, which will be awarded to 40 different local service organizations. At the Bloomington City Council meeting on December 4th, Councilmember Sidney Zulik gave a report on the elected officials' salary committee. Zulik is the chair of the committee and walked through their thought process on raising salaries for the elected city officials for 2025.
I want to start off by saying I completely understand why people are upset. It is a pretty significant increase, and I just want everyone to know that it was not our intention to come off as, closed-minded or people who aren't paying attention. For me, it's really hard to do this with a full-time job. So my thinking was that we could raise council salaries enough so that they could be paired eloquently with another part-time job and still be financially sustainable for one person to live with. To the people who have expressed their concerns, I really appreciate your engagement. This is one of the reasons why we release things 10 days in advance, so that we can get kind of a temperature gauge on how the population is feeling.
Zulik explained that from her experience as a council member, it is hard to maintain a full-time job in addition to the significant workload a council seat requires. However, after hearing from the public, she said they ended up going with a smaller pay raise that followed the 5 guiding principles that they had established.
For City Council, we took a poll of all the different council members and asked them how many hours they thought people should be spending on council a week. The minimum was 12, the maximum was 26 hours per week. And so in an effort to, be on the lower end, we did take the 12 and divide that by 40, which ultimately brought us to 30%. And so I hope you understand how we got to the process, and I also understand that a lot of people are upset. I hear you, and I want to just assure you that Councilmember Daley and I will be working on an amendment this weekend. And I guess just thank you for everyone for being a part of this process, and thank you to my committee members.
The council will hold a special session on December 10th to further discuss the ordinance to fix elected official salaries. Later in the meeting, council members deliberated on a resolution incorporating the Safe Streets for All Safety Action Plan. According to council documents, the plan intends to reduce the number of deaths and injuries caused by crashes. Chief Deputy Clerk Sophia McDowell said that the Safe Streets initiative would be a part of the city's transportation plan.
Resolution 2024-20 to amend the City of Bloomington's transportation plan in order to incorporate the Safe Streets and Roads for All, SS4A, Safety Action Plan. The synopsis is pursuant to state law and as directed by the Common Council in Resolution 2024-07, this resolution amends the City of Bloomington's transportation plan in order to incorporate the Safe Streets and Roads for All, Safety Action Plan.
Councilmember Hopi Strasburg asked how the city would work alongside local school systems with the Safe Streets plan. Planning Services Manager Ryan Roebling said that they have been in communication with MCCSC schools.
Has there already been any collaboration with MCCSC on this, and what kind of collaboration? If not, what's your plan for collaboration? How are we going to focus on that?
Yeah, so that is something we have already started. We have reached out to MCCSC, had a meeting, and I believe we have a meeting on Friday as well. The long-range planner in the Planning and Transportation Department is spearheading that. So we're working with MCCSC right now to hopefully pick a school to start an action plan for, and then we'll get that process rolling for every school as the eventual plan.
Okay. A follow-up. Just a quick follow-up on that is there are some easements going in some places from neighborhoods to schools, and they are in a variety of shape in terms of how well they've been maintained, because there's not consistent maintenance for all of them. Has that been considered in terms of figuring out a plan for consistent maintenance of easements?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the way there's multiple ways to approach Safe Routes to School. The way we are planning to do it is individualized per each school so that there's more community engagement. And so that is something that would come up at the safety action plan level for each school. So like Fairview, for example, we would have a meeting there with their PTA and their officials and come up with a plan where we could then discuss how maintenance and things like that, and have a formalized plan on how to do that. So yes, it hasn't come up yet, but it will.
Councilmember Dave Rollo asked what role the council would play when it comes to significant modifications to roadways. Roebling responded.
What role would the council play if, a decision is made to, say, place chicane or roundabouts, or, what we would call maybe a significant modification to the roadway?
Currently, you're the budgetary fiduciary body, so that would be your primary responsibility there. It would still go through the engineering, specifically the city engineer, and potentially one day the ATC would have a review step to review any modifications to the roadway. But currently, right now, that is how it is.
So it would come to us under a Title 15.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Appropriation of some sort with a recommendation, say, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, so no, chicanes and items like that would not currently come under your review for Title 15. Stop signs, items like that, parking, installation, et cetera, that would be involved in Title 15. But if a modification required that, then yes, that would absolutely come back here. But something like a chicane currently would not.
A chicane wouldn't, okay, would not come before us?
Not currently, no.
Okay, so you could incorporate chicanes. And a chicane is essentially, just for clarification for people watching it or something, could you describe it? It's essentially bump outs that prevent you from driving fast. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. So it's a slight alteration in the curb of the road so that in the idea that it will cause you to slow down in order to weave through the area, for lack of a better term, and be more cautious through a street. So it's a bump out, generally mid-block, and they're offset rather than a bump out, which narrows the road in the same way. Chicane makes more of like an S turn.
Rollo followed up, clarifying that this was not always under the domain of the city's engineering department. Director of Engineering Andrew Seabour explained the history and how this would impact the council's role moving forward.
Could I just inquire, I've been around forever, I think, not ever, for a long time, it seems. And it used to come before the council, these sorts of decisions. And then it is now more or less within the domain of engineering. When did that occur?
I'm going to have to kick that one to Andrew.
Good evening, Andrew Seabour, City Engineer. There was a time, I can't recall when, but Title 15 listed traffic calming devices. And I think when the updated traffic calming and greenways program was adopted, that changed Title 15. I do know that at the time, having just internal debates on what is traffic calming is a really interesting question too, and state code actually defines what some traffic calming is, and it's surprising. I don't recall off the top of my head what the devices are, but some of them that you would think to be listed are not, and some of them that should be. Anyway, so it's a complicated matter.
But in any case, this doesn't cede any authority, this plan. It essentially, that authority has already been granted.
I think that's fair. One thing I believe the plan speaks to in some detail is a desire for projects, I think all transportation projects, to go to the ATC for a review through that safety lens. And I believe the vision of the ATC, which is a separate thing, is to at least make sure there is a council representative on that committee as well.
Council President Isabel Piedmont Smith asked about the public engagement element of the plan. Seabour said that the city hopes to better engage the public on the matter.
Appendix B talks about public engagement and equitable engagement, and then also reviews the demographics of the people who have been engaged in forming this plan. What is the public engagement plan for future implementation of traffic safety measures?
Yeah, so that is another great question. Currently, it's proposed in the ATC, they're going to keep talking about both things apparently, that public engagement and community-centric design is included, and so there has to be a clear representation that happened, and the way we're going to do that is through the model created through this program. So we're going to do public outreach in the same manner, ask the same demographic questions to make sure that we're reaching the right the groups, but it is something we absolutely need to continue to expand on and will continue to expand on. That is another item in there, is to call out public engagement as something that we need to do more of and do better.
So public engagement, you're planning to carry that out for specific projects in the same manner that you did for this plan?
Yes, obviously in a smaller version for each project, but yes, absolutely. If you're familiar with the Indiana Street or Indiana Avenue Safety Corridor project that we've started, we adopted an exact model replicating this with public outreach on the corridor and through the internet, asking similar questions with the same web map or a similar web map to gain the same knowledge that we did about the total plan for that individualized plan.
The council voted unanimously in support of the resolution. At their meeting on December 3rd, the Bloomington Board of Public Works approved a 3-part construction contract on Kirkwood Avenue. The project includes a signal replacement at the intersection of Kirkwood and Rogers, curb ramps and crosswalk improvements between Adams and Rogers, and resurfacing the street on West Kirkwood. The project is also slated to include bump outs that narrow lanes for parking. Secretary James Roach said that a similar plan was made over 20 years ago, but was never implemented.
I remember, I'll put my old man hat on, but back in 2002, the plan for West Kirkwood, lots of neighborhood involvements, lots of thinking about the future. That plan included those very elements, and for one reason or another, which we won't get into right now, they were never put in. So it's nice to see that finally come to fruition.
The board approved the contract. The next Bloomington Board of Public Works meeting will be held on Tuesday, December 17th. And that is all for CATSweek. Thank you for joining us. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.